Good afternoon. Today we'll talk about now that we have discussed regarding the types of project and the importance of project management, and how we choose the best project as which will add value to our organization. So with these skills, armed with these skills, today we'll talk about the project implementation and control part. And what are you going to learn out of it? The basic learnings that you'll have is you'll get an understanding of how the implementation system is designed, how what kind of controls have to be put in place so that you can identify deviations very in advance and correct them. You can also learn a little bit about the design and how these control systems are to be designed. So, with this objective, we'll talk about the uh, uh, why this monitoring, this project monitoring, why is it important? Now, if we have to measure the performance of the project, we need to collect, record, and report various kinds of information, and so that monitoring of all these things will result in good project performance because see because once we monitor, we can then judge whether we are going in the right path or not on the right path. Now the point is, but you have to understand that the monitoring as an activity, it has to be very distinct from the controlling as well as from the evaluation, because controlling will use the data that is supplied by the monitoring. While we are monitoring, we are collecting data and recording the data and reporting, preparing various kinds of report. Now controlling is going to use those kind of data, so that what we can do is, suppose we have to achieve a particular goal and we have to walk a particular path to achieve that particular goal, and if I deviate from that path, obviously I will not achieve my goal. So monitoring will tell me the data that I am collecting through monitoring. It will tell me whether I am actually walking on the right path or I am deviating, and controlling will use this data and actually identify if I am deviating. If I am deviating, it will, the control techniques will bring me to path, I mean the walks to the proper, it will be guided to the proper path, so that we achieve the target or the objective in time. That is the purpose of monitoring, that the performance has to be in congruence with the planned performance. So something that is planned and something that we are doing, it has to there has to be congruence between these two. The controlling will ensure that. Whereas the evaluation is about, through evaluation we reach judgments about the quality and effectiveness of the project performance. So when we are talking about project performance, the first is monitoring, the second one is controlling, and then the evaluation. Now, then how do we design this kind of a monitoring system which will actually perform according to the, so that our planned performance and actual performance, how they moves, how they actually converge. To do that, we need to have a proper monitoring system. Now the how do you then design a monitoring system? Now in the first step in setting up any monitoring system is that you have to identify the key factors that you are to be that you want to be controlled. In a project there could be several factors, but what are the main factors that the project manager needs to control? Because the manager wants to obviously monitor performance, the cost, the time, but he has to define precisely with uh, very specific details about the performance, details about the cost, and details about the time, which factor of these things that he wants to control. And he has to then establish the the exact boundaries that within which the control is to be maintained. Because unless you know if a thing deviates beyond a certain control limit, then only it will be you will intervene. Otherwise, if there is a there will always obviously some kind of an organic variance between these things. So if you interfere too much in the name of controlling, then probably your performance will be affected. So you have to set the limits within beyond which you will intervene for controlling purpose. So that you have to also maintain. there will be other factors important as well. For example, the number of manner that you need, and the number of exact design changes that you might have to make, the probably the level of satisfaction of customer which is acceptable to you. Some of these criteria are also important to be looked into while we're designing these. These are the factors that we need to control. But you see, the having said it, the best source of these items that we are going to monitor, where you can get them, the best source is the project action plan. Now, what is an action plan? Basically, we have discussed already about the project action plan. It is basically it describes what is to be done, when is to be done, who is to do what, and the planned level of usage of resource usage for each task. Like this task will be allocated this resource, this task will be allocated this resource, what should be the work package, who will be responsible unit in the project. All these things are a part of the this project action plan. Now, the monitoring system, what we're talking about here, the monitoring system, it is a direct connection between the planning aspect and the controlling aspect. So but sometimes what we do is what we try to control is basically most of the times it has been seen that the project managers, they usually focus their attention on the areas which are visible, on which they can easily collect data. So basically the objective of monitoring is to keep an eye on the objective that we are going to achieve. But here the focus shifts to the area which is visible and which is on which you can easily get data. So if you are not very careful regarding what we are trying to control, the focus shifts from the objective what we want to achieve to the point what is visible to you. So see, what happens is monitoring has to concentrate primarily on the various measurement aspects of performance, of cost, and of time. But because the cost aspect is very visible, you will only focus on time, cost, and you will not focus on the performance. So the basic monitoring system will fail. So see, given all this information, now the performance criteria, the standard, and the data collection procedure has to be established for whatever factor you are deciding to monitor. Suppose you are deciding to monitor the customer satisfaction, one of the factors that you are going to monitor, that is a customer satisfaction. Now, when you are talking about customer satisfaction, you have to decide what the performance criteria, meaning that if you can quantify the performance satisfaction of the client, then what level of satisfaction is desirable, what should be the standards, what kind of data collection procedure you must be undertaking, so that you can actually judge whether these the data about the factors are available, so that you can judge whatever you are planning to achieve in this case of in the case of this factor is being achieved. Now, see, having said it, now that we have identified the factors that you need to control, the next obvious is that the information that you need to collect about each of these factors. Now, what can be what could be the various data that you need to collect about a particular factor that you want to control? See, it could be something like an accounting data. For example, the various cost figures, the profit figures, you can talk about those data. You can also talk about the operating data, like the cost of input, the what kind of a production schedule you have. You can talk about the engineering test data, the various kinds of reactions that the customers have. The suppose a product needs some kind of a specification change or something like that. So you can talk about this could be the various data that you collect about the specific factor that you want to control, that you want to monitor, basically that you want to monitor, obviously for the purpose of controlling. So the however, what problem will be there is that the you have to determine very precisely which of the all, there will be a gamut of information about, available about a factor. You have to be very precise that which are the data that are needed for me to monitor and which are the data that are needed for me to control. Because if you get lost in so much of data, there is no, it will only become a noise. The data will only become a noise. You will hardly get any information out of the data to be able to monitor the factor and to be able to control the factor. See, the kind of obviously the kind of data that we are going to collect is, it will be dictated by the project plan, no doubt about it. Also by the the objective that you are pursuing, your parent organization objective is pursuing. So the your first job hence should be to extract the performance, the time, and the cost goals. So if you are in a are a project manager, you have to first find out that what should be the performance goal. What is it we are going to achieve, in what budget we are going to achieve it, and what should be by the time of delivery of this particular project. Now, very precise data about these things you must extract. Now the your goal has to be to relate some to different levels of detail. That is, for example, data has to be identified and measure the achievements against these particular goals. So suppose you have a performance criteria that this has to be minimum achieved, should be the budget, and this should be the time. Let us say the time available for you is 9 months. Then you have to measure each of these achievements at each stage against the budgeted or the predetermined time. So that is the reason why you need to first identify the factor and then identify precisely which are the data you are going to collect about the factor. So that should be the first step of your collection. The monitoring system. Then, as we know, factors are identified. Now the point is, how do you collect the data? So what kind of data, how to collect the data? Now see, when we are going to collect data, you can be faced with several issues. Some of the issues I have put here in the form of question marks. Now, should you gather cost data before or after some specific event? Now, for example, you have a basic landmark of a particular project. Are you going to collect data? Suppose, and you are going to collect. If the factor you have identified is that you want to monitor the cost. Now, whether you are going to collect that particular. Suppose the other day we were talking about the library automation system, right? And for the library automation system, we have given a budget for this entire process of entering the books and the completely issue procedure and everything has to be done in ERP system. Now, suppose my first landmark is that all the books have to be barcoded, because earlier they used to be in the manual system, now they have to be barcoded. Now that is my first landmark, that I have to complete within this particular budget this particular task of barcoding all of these things. Now, whether how much has been spent on that particular issue, whether you are going to collect it before that event or after that event, that you have to decide. Okay, or whether you are going to collect, let us say 80% of the books are over, have been barcoded, now you are collecting data, or you will wait and for all the books to be barcoded and then you will start gathering data about the cost. That you have to first decide. This is a very important decision. I am talking about a very simplistic, because looking at the students could be from various backgrounds, so I'm giving you very simplistic. In case of engineering project, this could be very complicated things. For a software development, could be different. Now, what point of time, given the factor cost, what point of time we are going to gather the data? The next question may be, is it always mandatory to collect the time and cost information exactly at the same point in the process? Okay. If for this module you have collected this point of time and cost data, are you going to do the same for the second module? What will you do if a specific piece of your data that you want to collect, um, many people they have a fear of reporting, because simply because suppose there is a team member, you have a team member, suppose he's doing something which is not in the best interest of the team, but many times the people will not report it simply because the entire team we might get a negative performance evaluation. Something might of that might this is about the human factor. You can also suppose the cost is overshooting, and we are trying to manage through other sources, and so that if we report that we are oversetting the cost to a great margin, then there might be consequences. So we are not reporting that. We are running late on a particular schedule, but we think that we'll quickly manage, but we're not reporting it on time. So there could be so many human fears attached with this kind of information not being shared, because there is a fear that this will contribute negatively towards your performance. Then it might so happen that the team which is working on a particular project, he is charging you for the man hour, whereas in essence they might be doing some other work for in during that particular time. So what are you going to do? Suppose you are even aware of it. Suppose a particular person is working for a general is a part of, let us say, two projects. So he is working for another aspect of the project, but he is charging this particular project for the hours that he is present there. So you are aware of it. What are you going to do? Okay. So um, how do you collect the data? Are you going to collect the data through Google Forms, or do you have special formats or matrices or whatever? Or how are you going to? Are you going to go for only interview techniques, or through questionnaires, or through whatever? What the depending on the factor that you are talking about, what kind of techniques you are going to use for data collection? You can set off the quality control procedures to obviously ensure that the data is transferred from the source to the information system. Okay. So what kind of honesty and integrity you will have at that point of time? So these are the various issues that will come to you while you are trying to collect data. So you have to sort these out before you actually get down to the actual process of collecting the data. Now, now that you have, suppose you started collecting data and data gradually comes into you, the data might take various forms. It is not that you're collecting for one aspect of the project and the other aspect of the project, they will look same. Depending on the kind of data that you're collecting and the techniques that you're using for collection, the data you're collecting might take various forms. Now, what are those forms that you can talk about? They can look as frequency counts. We all understand what is a frequency count. Suppose a particular event, 10 persons have reported, so it has a frequency of 10. Another event 2, let's say 25 people have reported, so it has a frequency of 25. So one particular performance criteria or satisfaction criteria, what is the frequency? So what is the frequency of a particular problem being reported? So it could look like a frequency count. It can also be a raw number. Now in a raw number, it could be like date, it could be hours, it could be physical, the raw material, physical amount of resources that you have used. It could be several other things. These raw numbers, these numbers, see, frequency will be reported in different way, but raw numbers will be reported in a variety of ways. So you can have the variances being also reported, the various comparison ratios, and various time series changes in the system performance that can also be reported. So through this, you can also have these the third category, that is a subjective numeric rating. These subjective estimates are usually qualitative ones, and they are made by the knowledgeable individuals or groups who have specific knowledge about a particular factor. Now they can be reported in most of the same ways that the objectives of the raw numbers are, but you have to be careful that the numbers are not manipulated so that it is only suitable for the quantitative measure. So that can be the subjective numeric rating. You can also have indicators so that when the the manager cannot measure some aspect of the system performance, if there is no direct available measure of a system performance, it you can find out an indirect measure which is just like an indicator. Now the for example, the speed with which the orders are processed and the changes that are incorporated in the project basically is a good measure of a team's efficiency. Now, suppose you want to measure the team's efficiency. How do you do it? You look at indicators. Now, what could be an indicator? The indicator is how quickly the order is being processed, or how quickly, suppose you suggest a change, how quickly the team is able to incorporate that particular change. So, if they do it really quickly, then the team is performing efficiently. So, these are basically indicators. Then, obviously, last you can have the verbal measures. Now, for example, you can talk about the quality of team member cooperation. This can be a verbal measure. You can give grades like outstanding, excellent, good, average, like that. Then you can talk about the morale of the team member, how motivated they are. You can talk about the kind of interaction they have with the client. So these are all verbal measures, and these verbal measures can be derived through one-to-one interaction with the person that is intended. Obviously, these are not the things that you can collect from a set of questionnaire. So these have to be extracted through one-to-one interaction. Now, the if everybody in the team understands that the what for what purpose the data is being collected, so you can get qualitative data for your specific use. Now the point is, the after the data is collected, the various reports can be generated. Reports on various status reports, the various progress reports can be generated using this data. Now you can talk about a status report, you can talk about a time report. How far we are into the project. You can talk about the cost report, what percentage of the allocated budget has been spent. The variance report, like what should be, what should have been, what is what is the budgeted thing, what is the actual thing, that is called a variance. So variance reports can be generated. So the various cause and effect, suppose there's a deviation in these things, so you can find out a cause, so you can generate a cause report as well. You can have various kinds of charts, various kinds of tables, which are pictorially they convey a lot of information. So these are can be done. So the various kind of the comparables can also be generated. So the point is, you can do so many things once you get the data. Now please don't lose sight that why we are collecting data. We are collecting data on various factors so that we are able to design a proper monitoring system. Now the point is, when we're talking about monitoring system, we're talking about the how they're going to use the data in the monitoring system. Now, the purpose of the data obviously is to, report. They prepare various kinds of report, and you have to help the project controller so that he can do whoever is in the charge of the project control. The data is going to help him to, control the data through lots of data analysis. Just now we talked about this variance. Now whenever you are talking about a variance, see the variance, significant variance from the plan, you have to highlight that suppose we were supposed to do this, but we have been falling short by, let us say, a big margin of 30%. So these variances need to be highlighted. They are technically they say they have to flag, so that the data analyst will have to flag these things so that the controller doesn't miss out on these key areas. Now you can also use various kinds of statistical quality control, the SQC methods, to find out the size of variance, whether the size of variance is significant or not. So you can also sometimes determine the probable causes of various kinds of variance. Now, if you know the cause, then it should be noted down, and if noted down for further action on that. If you are not able to find out the cause why the variance is happening, then you have to do proper investigation to find out what could be the cause. For example, see, in the airlines, the missing luggage is a big problem. The luggage, because you see, you travel in the, I mean, the in the airport, the luggage travels in, I mean, the another compartment of the plane, and the luggage has a different route, is taken through the conveyor belt. You walk in through the airport, and then you go and wait for your, I mean, luggage. Now, so many aircrafts are coming, so the luggage has a tendency to be, mixed up, and the luggage of one flight might go to the other. This is a very big problem in case of airlines, that the luggage, there is a case of the missing luggage. There could be so many thousands of factors which can contribute towards this. Now, suppose if you collect data about them, and you classify them accordingly, prepare charts and tables, you will know that there are some thousands of factors responsible. Some of these factors, you know the cause why it is happening, but some of these factors you might not identify the cause why it is happening. So if you are not able to do that, then you have to investigate why this particular thing leads to a loss of a luggage. So probably, is it happening because a particular person is in charge, a particular staff who is in charge on that particular day? You have a lot of loss of luggage. So is there a problem with that particular individual or the staff who is handling that particular luggage? Because you don't see on other days when some other staff is positioned to do that. So you have to find out what could be the reason why, when this particular fellow is present, the luggage is missing. So is it because probably he's listening to something on his earphone when he's dealing with the luggage? Is he, suppose, attending some class, or doing some career advancement things while listening to the YouTube videos or something like that? So is it the cause, or is there something else the cause? So you have to find out. So, the presence of one person is the reason why the luggage is missing. Now, why the particular person, in his case the luggage is missing, you have to investigate and find out that particular reason. So that has to be done. Now, the decision about when an investigation should be conducted, and by whom, and by what methods, are the prerogatives of the controller, of obviously. Okay, so this is how we are going to use the data in the case of monitoring. Next comes the question of your, the issues, various issues that you are going to face in case of collecting the data. Now, the point is, the two things that will come to your mind when we talk about the issues in data collection is the honesty and the bias that is there in the data collection, and the obviously the second part is the reward and punishment that you have in place. Now, you have to take care, while you are developing a monitoring system, you have to take care that the honesty and integrity has to be intact while collecting data. Otherwise, there will be a lot of compromise in the data, and the quality of data will be such that it might not be useful for the purpose of monitoring. Now, the issue of honesty probably can be dealt with if you put internal audit. Okay, so honesty can be dealt with. You can, but if you have an internal audit, whether the data has been honestly collected or not. But I believe no audit can serve the purpose of ensuring that the information, gathered is, let us say, there is no bias. Okay, maybe honesty can be dealt with if we are talking about internal audit. But what about the individual bias? Now, the all data that are, it is, I will not be wrong if I say that every data that one collects is biased, because the person has his understanding, the person who is collecting and reporting them, whether he's advertently or inadvertently, the bias automatically creeps into the data that one is collecting. So every data is biased. Now the point is, we all understand that if you look at a scenario and I look at a scenario, you will tend to interpret it in a different way, I will tend to interpret it in a different way. So the point is, we have to be very sure how sensitive the project's performance is to these kind of biases. Okay, so see, if the bias in the data does not significantly affect the performance of the project, then we will do nothing, because if we intervene and try to correct the bias, see, honestly we can deal with in case of internal audit. So we can check, we can have various measures to find out the whether the data has actually been collected or it has been manipulated. But the data that has been collected, whether the individual bias has crept into it, there is no way of knowing. But the issue is, do we need to know or do we need to correct? It depends on the requirement of the removal of bias from the data for the project performance. Now, if a project is not very sensitive to this kind of bias, then why to intervene and why to spend resources on that? So do nothing. But if the biased finding and correcting activities are worthwhile, giving time to them is worthwhile only if your project requires that data with no or less bias is needed. For example, suppose you take up a project of writing a history book. Okay, so and that particular project is very sensitive to the bias of the individual bias while collecting and reporting information, right? But for example, if we're talking about a production system, probably the kind of bias that will creep into the this thing, the individual who is collecting the data might not contribute much towards the project performance. But for a history book writing, this bias means a lot. So you need to be very aware about what kind of bias, how sensitive is your project performance to the individual biases, because every data is going to have some kind of a bias. Okay, the next issue that is very important is we frequently, you might have heard that it is frequently said that the rewards and punishments should be closely associated with performance. Okay, so everybody thinks that it's a common sense, but what I will tend to think that if you tie the reward and punishment to the achievement of a project, the I think it will, instead of motivating the people, it will. The people will, in fact, for the fear of punishment, that there will be a lot of pressure on the people to understate the goals. They will be able to achieve something, but they will understate it, because they have a tendency to believe that if we are not able to achieve the target, then probably there will be a punishment for us. So they will purposefully compromise on the objective, or purposefully compromise on the goals, and they will generate plans which can be easily met or exceeded with minimal risk or effort. So this kind of this reward and the punishment, if you are going to directly attach to the performance goal, so it might actually backfire. Okay, so we have to be very careful. This is something that happens in real life, and it's a very real life problem. This needs dealing. Okay, now you talk about the various information needs. Now the everyone information needs for the reporting process. So everyone that is concerned with the project, and whoever is tied to the project reporting system, so the monitoring system has to be constructed in such a way that it has to address every level of management. Okay, so see, there will be a top level of management, there will be a middle level of management, there will be a low level of management. Now, using the data that you have collected, you can generate so many kinds of reports. Now, the reports can contain data relevant to the control of a specific task. that you are carrying out and according to a specific schedule. So there could be reports that could be generated on a daily basis. That could be reports that could be generated on a monthly basis. There could be reports that could be generated on a quarterly basis. So now the point is, what kind of reporting is needed by what level of management. Now see, the frequency of the reporting should be enough to allow the control to be exerted during or before the completion of the particular task. Now, for example, suppose a task is supposed to be completed within 3 months, okay, and you are generating a quarterly report. So the point is, if the, why are you actually doing it? Because we are monitoring it. Suppose there is a deviation in a particular task, and if the task is supposed to be completed in 3 months and you are dependent on a quarterly report, so by the time your quarterly report comes, the task either has been completed or it has deviated so much by the time that there is no way of correcting it. The correction of the task will virtually mean I mean, a 200% or 300% cost hike. So the point is, if you're talking about a task which is to be completed in 3 months, then you need to actually look at probably the fortnightly report. Even the monthly report is going to be, I mean, I think quite late. So you can look at the weekly report, you can look at the fortnightly report. Okay. So what should be the frequency of reporting for each of these tasks is very important. See, the lower level personnel, their requirement will be always detailed information, and so they will need fact reports whose frequency is really high. Probably you can talk about a daily report. Many times when these marketing departments, they monitor their base level executives, they always depend on a daily call report. Okay, so what have you done in a particular day? Which are the clients you have visited on a particular day? These are called the daily call reports. So the lower level of executives, the starting beginner level executives, they need to prepare report which they need to submit to their supervisory authority on a daily basis. Okay, because they will require detailed information about the individual task and the factors that are affecting such tasks, so that they can take corrective measures. But the senior management level, then they don't require, probably they don't need to look at the daily and the routine activities. So for them, if you generate daily reports, it is not going to I mean, solve any purpose, rather it is going to be bothersome for the top management. So for the top management, probably you can talk about a frequency I mean, the report having less frequency, probably a quarterly report will do for reporting to the top management. So depending on the level of management, the data can be analyzed and the reports could be produced to depending on the level to which you are supplying the report to. So um, that is how you are going to report, I mean, the these things. Now the point is, you need to have several project milestones. Now I mean, project, when you're talking about monitoring a project, so what will I monitor? The factor has been identified. Which data is to be collected about them, that has been decided. Now once we have collected the data, we have the various kinds of report, the regular reports, daily reports, the short-term reports, the quarterly reports, or these reports are now generated, though we can have now various graphs, charts, all those things are now available with us. Now the point is, when we are monitoring a project, now we have to identify the basic milestones. What are the milestones of a project? See, the project is, it consists of a thousands of tasks. Okay, so am I going to monitor each of these tasks through the data I have collected? That is a futile activity. So when we're monitoring, we're actually looking at like various milestones. For example, if you talk about construction of a house as a project, now the first milestone is probably going to be the grade beam. Okay, so you have the foundation work, you have the, suppose you are going for piling activities and all that, you have the pile cap has been built, then you have the grade beams laid. So the casting of the grade beam could be the first milestone, and you might have decided on that today, suppose we are starting, the grade beam has to be finished within 3 months time, and the budget allocated for this particular, suppose it's a residential house, so the budget allocated for this up to the grade beam is, let us say 20 lakh. So the point is, so you have now the first milestone. So then while you are monitoring, you look at the first milestone. Now if in the first milestone there is some variance in terms of time, variance in terms of cost. Now what could be the variance in terms of time? For example, you had decided on 3 months, but now the first milestone is being completed in 3 months 20 days. It's a big variance. Now if it is completed within 3 months 3 days, there is the variance could be ignored. But if it's 3 months and 20 days, probably then your next milestone will get delayed. Similarly, if it is instead of 20 lakhs, the first milestone has already taken up, let us say, more than 20 lakh. So then obviously your budget is also going to be, the next milestone is going to be problematic. So the every project has to be broken down so that the crucial milestones have to be identified for a particular project. It could be a software project, it could be engineering project, it could be a construction project, it could be any project you can think about. The idea is the same. Now, the senior manager, for the senior manager, the milestones could be, see, they're dealing with the big, very large size projects. So there will be very small, less number of milestones for the top management. Like in a big project, there might be, let's say, 5 to 6 milestones. But for the project manager who is in charge of delivering that particular project, there may be several critical points. If he is talking about monitoring only at 5 or 6 points, then probably the project is in danger. So for him, there are several critical points in a project, which is quite a few. For a big project, the critical points could run into 50s, 60s, 100s even. Okay, so the critical schedule point in a particular project schedule, when the major decision is to be made, you have to effect changes. Probably you have to reallocate resources in terms of capital, in terms of human, in terms of material. So that has to be initiated. The technical changes or the technical results that have achieved, if there is some need for a technical change, those have to be effected. So for him, the critical points of the milestones are going to be many, whereas the milestones that are relevant to the lower level, that is finer detail, and it will occur with the highest frequency. So for a low level manager, the milestones will be quite a few. For the project manager, the number is lesser. For the top level manager, and the milestone is still lesser and very few in number, the project milestones. Now, having identified the milestones, now we understand that the reports have to be generated. Now the point is, what is the importance of a timely report? Now the importance of a timely report is that there is a mutual understanding of the goal. You are aware about the various progress in the various parallel activities, what kind of problems are there, the what kind of realistic planning needs to be done. You can identify the early, warning signals quite early in the life of the project. Could be the what could be the potential problems or delays that might affect. You can minimize the confusion. If you are changing something, then there will be bound to be confusion. You can minimize that particular confusion. You can ensure that the management action is faster. Now, so all these things can be affected through the importance of your timely report. Now, when we talk about the this thing, your report types. The report types could be, it could be again routine, it could be exception, or it could be special analysis. Now, while we talk about the routine report, now these reports are basically issued on a regular basis, on resource usage, is they're done periodically. It can be done on a, I mean, daily basis. It can even be done on a weekly basis, maybe even for a monthly basis. So these are all on routine reports. Okay, now the point is then the exception reports are useful in two cases. What are the two cases? Number one, they are directly oriented to the project management decision making, and it should be distributed to the team member who will have the prime responsibility of a particular decision. So for them it is useful. Then the second, where it can be issued, that when decision is made on an exception basis and is desirable to inform the other managers as well as to document decision. So for example, exception reports are whenever they're affecting some kind of a change and you need to report it to your team members to as well as to other members, then it can be done. When the next kind of report is a special analysis report, when you want to for example disseminate the results of a particular study. For example, a particular problem arose, and a specific problem and typical problem arose, so you studied that particular problem, and you are giving this is peculiar to a software development. For example, if a typical problem is reported by a client. Now we analyze that particular issue, and you come up with solutions to that particular issue. So you this needs to be disseminated to the team members. It might cover matters that may be of interest to other project managers. Suppose the other project manager also comes up with that kind of an problem, so he can depend on this kind of analysis to quickly resolve the issue. So that could be a special analysis report. Now, the one of the I mean this monitoring thing, we have been talking about the data that we are collecting, the analysis that we are doing, and the various tables and charts, the various this thing. Now the point is, that is the when we are talking about a variance, you can depend on something called a earned value chart. Now look at this earned value chart. You see the variances can be easily identified. See, there is a point of your schedule variance and the total variance, and the time the cost we are spending on the total variance. If you look at this particular graph, it is there. The spending variance is actually the total spending variance is actually the cost less the value completed. The scheduled variance, I mean the cost of the overrun. Okay, and the scheduled variance is basically the value completed less the baseline plan. Okay, and the total variance is the sum of the two, the actual less the planned cost. So that is the total variance. Now the top management is usually most concerned with the schedule variance. Okay, the whereas the project controller is probably concerned with the spending variance. Okay, so there is a schedule variance and the spending variance. Top manager is more concerned with the schedule variance, whereas the manager will be, I mean, who is the directly in charge, the manager will be, or the controller will be in looking at the spending variance. Okay, I mean the project controller is on the spending variance. Okay. Now the this kind of a chart, the earned value chart, it shows that the overshooting of the cost and performance, I mean falling short or underrun of a performance. The project manager can figure out what he needs to do to get the system back to track. Okay, so it can have he can do, he can do things such as you can borrow resources, you can hold a meeting of the project team to see that if people can suggest various changes. So this kind of charts will help the project manager to actually look at what kind of variances he is facing. Now we come to a very important aspect of your monitoring and control, the project control. Now this project control, it is the act of comparing the planned performance with the actual performance, and reduction of the gap, if there is any, between the, it is going to be, for example, we were supposed to do this much by this particular date, we have actually completed it, no action to be taken, we have surpassed it, very good, we are falling short, then what is the what needs to be done to reduce the gap. So the control is done with that particular purpose in mind. Now the this is the last element in the implementation of the cycle of planning, monitoring, and controlling. See, we started with the project planning, then we talked about the monitoring. Now we're talking about the controlling of the system. Now the information that you have collected about the system performance, compared with the desired or the basically planned level, and the action has is to be taken if actual and the desired performance significantly differs. Now the manager wishes to decrease that particular performance, so then controlling needs to be done. Then the reporting of performance, comparing the differences between the desired and actual performance, and why this performance actually, I mean, why this deviation actually happened, or why is it existing, that can also be explained through the use of project control. Now the control is done with the objective of the I mean the regulation of the results of the through alteration of, and the stewardship of your organizational goal, like how we are going to achieve that particular organizational goal, and the how we are going to direct the organizational assets towards particular that goal is what the project control aims at. Now, we can have, when we talk about types of control, we can talk about the physical asset control, the human resource control, or the financial resource control. Now, physical asset control, as the name indicates, it is concerned with the asset maintenance. It can be preventive asset maintenance, it can be corrective asset maintenance. So, I hope that is self-explanatory. Then you can talk about the inventory, for example, can be controlled. It has to be received, it has to be inspected, it has to be certified. It could be preventive, it could be, I mean, this thing. Okay, then you have the I mean preventive or corrective. Now the we talk about the human resource control. Human resource also needs regulation and conservation. So the measurement of I mean this every project is unique. So the skills of every individual who is working on a particular project, whether it is optimally utilized by the project team or not, that is of utmost importance. So the employee appraisals, the performance indices of your employees, the talent management part, the screening methods of your appointment, the retention, all these things, the promotion, all these things are a part of your human resource control. Then you talk about the financial resource control. This can never be overemphasized. We have been talking about the cost factor from the beginning. So the if your finance department has not been able to develop a suitable method for controlling the financial resources, then obviously the budget will overshoot. Now you can have both I mean regulation as well as conservation. It can be the use of, I mean, the current asset control, which we're talking about in the other paper, that is the working capital management paper. The you can how can you do this kind of control? You can control them through the various kinds of auditing and the finance controlling functions. You can do that through financial control. There are several techniques in the I mean with the accounts department to control those things. Then you talk about the kind of control processes that you can have. You can have three kinds of processes: cybernetics, or basically called as steering control, go no go control, or the post control. Now, cybernetics control is basically I have a this thing. Please have a look at the input, and then you have the process, and then you have the output. Now, what we just do is we monitor the system output. See, the input is going there into the process, and then we are monitoring the output. This function, this monitoring of the output, is actually done through sensor. Okay, and then it will measure one or more aspect of the output, and then these measurements that are taken by the sensor in the output process are then fed to the sent to the comparator, and the comparator compares them with a set of predetermined standard. Okay, the difference between the actual output and the standard output, the comparator compares that. Now the difference between the actual and the standard is then sent to the decision maker. Now the decision maker will then determine whether the difference is large enough to be actionable, or whether it is to be ignored. Now, if the difference is large enough to warrant action, signal is sent to the effector, and the effector will make changes either to the process or to the input. So this is called the cybernetic control, where you talk about the output control. Now, normally what happens is, if you want to reduce the deviation, then you send it through the feedback loop. This is called a negative feedback loop. Then you have the go no go control. Now go no go control, it usually takes the form of testing to see if any precondition has been met, whether will allow or will not allow. Now in certain characteristics of your output may be let us say required to fall within a precisely determined limit if the output is to be accepted by the client. For example, many times these automobile manufacturers, if they notice a small variation in the output, they can go for a whether will release this product to the market or will call it back. So there happens this go no go. If you allow, if you give it a go, then it will go to the market. If you give it a no go, it will be called back and redesigned or reprocessed, and then it will be allowed to go to the market. Now, what happens is, in regard to the time and cost, there may be penalties associated with the non-conformance. So if you let out a faulty product to the market, there could be some kind of penalty. So then you have to be very careful about this go no go decision. See, when the cybernetic control are automatic, and they will check the operating system, because the sensor is looking at the output continuously, so it will check the operating system. But the go no go system, it will operate only when the controller uses them. Like the output has been produced, now you're going for a go or a no go decision. The controller decides whether I will use this or not. Whereas in case of a cybernetic control, the sensor continuously performs the function of testing the output. Then you have this post control. Now cybernetic and go no go control, they are directed towards the accomplishment of the goal of an ongoing project. So if the project is ongoing, the cybernetic continuously performs, and go no go happens discretely by the controller. Whereas the post control is directed towards it is done after the process is over. Now you might tend to think that if the process is over, then what is the point of controlling? No, the post control is directed towards improving the chance for future projects to meet their goals. So if we look at the whatever has happened in the process, and if we're looking at the past, and we're trying to see what can be done to improve the system, then this kind of controls are going to be helpful in future. So though we cannot use the post control to control the current process, we can use them to improve the future processes. Now the post control is applied through various formal documents, which are usually constructed for the different sections. You can talk about the project objective, the various milestones, the checkpoints, the budgets, the final report on your project results, the recommendation for the project, I mean this thing, performance of your project and improvements. So you can talk about these kind of formal documents for the post control. Now you can design the various control systems, and how do you design it so that they are good enough. So there can be several criteria of how the control systems can be designed, which satisfy to be a good control system. So you can look at various kinds of while you are designing a control system, you can typically look at these critical ratios, which are these this is an example of a critical ratio, where the actual progress divided by the scheduled progress is multiplied with the budgeted cost divided by the actual cost. Now see, this table reports the actual progress in a column, scheduled progress in a column. And if you divide the actual progress with the scheduled progress, we'll get a number. Then there is a budgeted cost, there is the actual cost. So the budgeted cost divided by the actual cost, we will get a number. If you multiply them, then you get the critical ratios. Okay, so these critical ratios, your experience of dealing with the projects will tell you which kind of a critical ratio, and whether one is good enough or less than one is good or more than one is good. These critical ratios will tell you that. Now the for the controlling of your creative activities, see, sometimes creative activities will lead to some degree of uncertainty, delaying the process of the control. So in order to control this creative projects, you need to be very aware about three approaches. That is, review the progress continuously. Don't get lost in the creativity too much. You need to assign the personnel, reassign the personnel for creative projects, and you have to also control the resource inputs while you are talking about the creative controls. So I think with this we come to the end of today's session about the project monitoring and control. Thank you.